2 minutes early.
2 minutes early?
Yeah,
No one will know what to do with us.
I know. That's a whole 2 more minutes of ThursdAGE for all involved. Good ThursdAGE unto everyone.
No one will be watching yet. They won't start till 5 minutes after we're supposed to start.
I know. But here they are. I see them coming in from the Facebooks, coming in from the YouTubes, coming in from the Twitches. And we never know how many people are watching on Twitter.
No, of course not.
I'm presuming 1 million. Hey, Chris.
Hey, someone's here.
So today on ThursdAGE, we are, hey, Brian. Hey, Stan. The pre-show is fun, I think.
Oh, fun.
ThursdAgent Duke reporting for duty. A good ThursdAGE unto you, Brian. Dan, aloha. Dan's doing something a little different. But Owen, it is now officially the start of ThursdAGE. I know. Thanks, Sandra. Noticed that we have on our YouTube 666 subscribers. And so...
Oh, hell.
I saw that this morning and immediately shared it with the team. And they said to me, the stream of the beast. Face reveal. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm not as shaggy as I was last time I was on it. And
Oh, yeah?
a bit of a I got a beard and mustache trim since I was here last.
For you, my friends, it is the one, the only, the friendly, the fearless, the fierce, Owen Casey Stevens.
Hi, folks.
So I like today's topic. We are developing tabletop roleplay games, whether you got all the money in the world or just you and the 2 pennies you've got to rub together. It's tough.
It is super tough. And there's a lot more differences between the different levels of development, of the different tiers, let's say, of developing a product than just how much money you've got. And I have pardon me, I've got a broad view on this subject because I have worked at a lot of different tiers. I have been on staff at Paizo and Wizards of the Coast and developed material for them. I have developed things as a contractor for both those companies where the amount of money they have didn't change, but I was not on staff, but was being hired to develop as a freelancer. I had developed stuff on contract for Green Renine, which is what I'm doing for Fantasy Age. I've developed things for Matt Forbeck and a bunch of, maybe not a bunch, several other companies. And then I've done a lot of stuff that is material of my own that I either put out, say, on my Patreon. OwenCaseyStevens.com is my website. You can take that to my Patreon, or through Rogue Genius Games, where I'm the publisher. And I've developed stuff for Wright Publishing, where I was technically, I guess, on contract. It was always a little fuzzy because we pitched in there in an emergency. And there are just very different processes for how you do that, for all of the different situations you might find yourself in. And I'm not sure how many people really have a good idea how the sausage is made in that regard. And of course, people say you never want to know how the sausage is made, but we're trusting that someone here wants some insight on the various stages of development.
Yeah, well, and plus the idea that, we are having these conversations in the context of like the Age Creators Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And, for all intents, you are a publisher at that point. You are an independent developer of tabletop roleplay games. And, at that point, you kind of entered into, dare I say, Sausage Town. That seems bad.
Can we desperately find a different term than Sausage Town?
We can. I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, so there's a responsibility and and really just a matter of just personal survival to get to know how these things are done and to understand what you may run into across all those things, because you could enter in the thing that's interesting about tabletop development is, oh, and you were talking about the various sort of things that you do. You are all those things at once. Welcome to Sausage Town, to Stan. Thanks, Stan. But the idea that
That get mentioned one more time, and I expect a cartoon of Sausage Town, Stan. That's going to be your fault.
What have I done? The idea that you are just one of those things, because you do a ton. I mean, you yourself. You're your own independent developer. You're working with other independent developers. And a lot of these things happen all at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so I think we might want to start with what are we calling what a developer does as separate from a writer or a publisher. So let me start by saying that we're talking about separate from a writer. I also do a ton of writer and a lot of writer. I do writer. I also do a ton of writing, and a lot of publishers and developers do a ton of writing. But actual writing of a product, taking the outline and the word count and the topic and producing the finished, let us say, writer level draft of the product, that's a separate job. That is something different from development, and we'll get to that difference here in a minute. Being a publisher is only sort of different. Certainly, as Stan wrote, but I don't do editor. And it's true. I am not a great editor. I have edited, and one of the things I discovered while working for Screen Rant is that they have largely supplanted editors with the free version of Grammarly. And
Right.
I got to tell you, and not completely, just right when they have an editor process, but the writers have to pass their stuff through Grammarly before it goes to their editors, so that the editors aren't fixing stuff like agreement errors, or they did its. But I have not previously been a fan of the free version of Grammarly, and having worked with them, I've discovered that it's made great strides since I last tried it, and you can use social media posts. So I have left it on my machine, even though I'm not working for Screen Rant anymore. And I recommend it because it's free to people who want the effect of another set of eyes. And when it asks you, do you mean to make this change? You may have to look up the answer, but that will educate you on the right answer in the future. So, but yeah, editing is also another entirely different job, which developers sometimes do and often work with editors, but it is a separate pass.
Yeah.
So then there's the publisher. Now, a lot of publishers are also the developer, especially if you're a small publisher. So most of the time when I am acting as the publisher at Rogue Genius, I am the publisher and developer, but not all the time. We also publish stuff. We are the publishing partner for Everybody Games, and its owner and publisher, Alex Agunas, does his own development. So even then, the role is somewhat different. Byron F. Irving just wrote, I love passing the same document through both Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid just to watch the two programs argue with each other over the Oxford comma. Know whether or not you're using an Oxford comma, for example. And the correct answer is yes, you are. Anyway, I'm biased. I have to be unreasonably biased about something, and I'm not going to make it Star Wars or Star Trek. The publisher has a separate set of roles outside of what the developer does. And it can be the bigger the company, the more the publisher has to do that is separate from development. So like at Rogue Genius, I am perfectly capable of being the publisher and the developer. The publisher at Paizo, Eric Mona, really cannot take time to be a developer because as publisher, he has way too much on his plate. But let's talk a bit about what a publisher does aside from development. At the core, the publisher is in charge of making the decisions about what gets published and why, and what is done with the stuff that is published. So as a developer, I might well say, hey, I have an idea for a book that is going to be nothing but pie-based hazards for Fantasy Age, right? I want to do a pie-based hazard book. I'll have a whole bunch of different hazards set up for pie throwing crossbows and jesters with pies and giant meringue pie volcanoes that can spew over you and set you on fire. So as the developer, I can pitch the idea, I can write the outline, I can arrange for freelancers. It's the publisher's job to decide whether or not it is a good idea to publish that book. And I think most people would agree that most of the time that specific ridiculous product I pitched would be a bad idea. The publisher has to be concerned with more than just, is this book going to be popular? So if you're talking about Green Ronin specifically, like, we might love to do 20 books a month, right? We might love to have an adventure for Modern Age and an adventure for Fantasy Age and an adventure for Blue Rose and a new setting book for Blue Rose and an adventure for M&M and a new rules book for M&M and on and on and on. But the company cannot have that much money going out all at once. It's just not big enough. And we don't have enough staff to keep track of that many projects. So one of the really tough jobs that a publisher has to do, and good publishers do it in concert with all their other heads of departments and such, is say, okay, we really want a big adventure for Fantasy Age, for example. We can't do it the same month we are doing this other big project. So which months are we shooting for those? What's the schedule? When will we be able to get covers that we like? Talk to your art director and say, I really want something from, just as an example, Wayne Reynolds. Okay, we're gonna have a Wayne Reynolds color on the Fantasy Age core rulebook. Wayne is booked way in advance, and he is quite rightly pricey. He's one of the masters of the craft. So you have to say, okay, we can take the time, we can do the schedule. I'll put out the money. It's worth it for this product. And then we say, hey, we've got to do a 32-page adventure. Can we get a Wayne Reynolds cover for that? No, you can't. Even if we had the money for it, the 32-page adventure probably won't make it back, so it'd be a bad investment. But also, you don't want to hold up a 32-page adventure the number of months it would take to get a cover from Wayne Reynolds for that book. It's not a good match of a master's talents to what it takes to drive this thing. The more core a product is, the more relevant it is for it to have the longest schedule, the most expensive and best art, the most eyes on it, etc. So a core rulebook just makes more sense because no one can play the adventure without the core rulebook, but lots of people can pick up the core rulebook and never get the adventure. Stan points out, it's not just as simple as publish, don't publish. It's often a matter of, this isn't as good a book, but it might be a good digital only for a sale product or a free web product, or it's an article for one of our partners. That's the kind of thing a publisher has to be thinking about all the time. And he's right. And that an article for one of our partners, you have to think about, as the publisher, what does this company need to do as part of the industry in order to remain relevant and remain in people's eyes and be able to bring in talent and bring in customers. So you might well write an article because someone has licensed one of your products and you're doing something with them. Or if someone wants to license a product, right? There are a lot of RPGs that are translated into Spanish and French and Russian. Those are deals that have to be cut. And frequently someone has to decide, okay, it is worth taking this slightly smaller percentage than we would like because they are going to put it in this giant market. Or we have worked with this publisher before. We've never worked with that publisher. We know this translation publisher does a good job, so we would rather work with them. And this other people might be offering us more money, but if we haven't worked with them, we don't know anyone that's worked with them, we can't be sure we would ever see that money. Those are all the kinds of things. Are we going to do support for virtual tabletops? Are we going to sell things in PDF? If we can't get a print run because the price of paper has gone too high and there's too much cost shipping from China and there's a ship stuck in the Suez Canal.
Right.
Are we going to do this print on demand? Are we just going to do it PDF? Especially when you start to get into foreign markets, the publisher has to, and I'm talking a lot about publishing, but I want to carve it off of its own niche.
Right.
The publisher has to worry about stuff like trade tariffs and
Paper
import
pulp
fees and wood pulp. These are legit concerns for them. So that is why I say that the job of the developer is different. Now, when you're talking about, is something a good product for a given use, frequently a publisher will go to the developer and say, hey, I have done our schedule and we need 2 hardback books, 2 softback books 4 PDFs, and 3 articles. And I want you to pitch me ideas for those things, and we'll work out the schedule. And the developer will then work with the publisher. Stan points out we're doing a Kickstarter. What percentage of the cost do we need it to cover? And that the publisher has the ultimate responsibility for that. More and more, I see a lot of publishers turning and working with crowdfunding experts on some of those things.
Yeah.
But you also have to ask yourself, which products do we want to kickstart? And how often do we want to do Kickstarters? Some companies very successfully do a Kickstarter or some sort of crowdfunding every month. Some do more than one a month. Others do 1 or 2 a year. And someone ultimately is responsible for making those decisions. So as the developer, you are trying to take as much of the creative, I'm going to say burden, which is the wrong word. A lot of publishers I know would love to be able to do more of this, so it's not a burden. Take a lot of the creative work off of the publisher's plate so that it is being done in a way that the publisher can track and he can ask questions about and get what they need, and work with the freelancers and work with the other departments so that the final product meets the needs of the publisher, meets the standards of the company, but the publisher is not having to constantly watch over their various developers' shoulders to make sure things are getting done the way they need to get done. Now, if you are on staff as a developer and you're in the same building as them, keeping your publisher informed can be super easy, right?
Right.
I had weekly meetings at both Wizards of the Coast and Paizo when I was on staff, where we would just, hey, what are you doing this week? How's this project? Are there any problems? And the bigger, for Paizo in particular, the bigger and bigger that meeting got, the more that instead of waxing poetic about what we were doing, we'd be like, same as last week, nothing new, nothing different, nothing off schedule, and you'd go to the next person because we had, 25, 30 people in a room. At Wizards of the Coast, when I was there, I was just part of the Star Wars department, which was not originally just going to be the Star Wars department, but anyway. And so it was fewer people, and they would meet, once a week, twice a week, sometimes every day, casually in the morning. And then the head of that department would have a meeting with the vice president of production, which was generally speaking acting as the publisher, though I suspect someone else had the official job publisher. When you are not on staff, but you are working for one of those bigger companies, you have this interesting situation where you kind of have to decide how much information are you sending your publisher by email and when do you need to ask for a meeting. And that's actually gotten a lot better in the past few years. One of the things that I think the pandemic has done is got a lot of people a lot more comfortable with working out the process of doing remote information. And that was rarer at this level. I've only had a few freelance developer gigs as opposed to long-term contracts or on staff jobs, because most people like to keep their development, in-house with people they trust.
Right.
And I never developed anything for Paizo until I had been an employee there. When I was developing stuff for Wizards of the Coast, which is back when I did Star Wars Saga briefly at the beginning, again, they knew that I was there. We got a fascinating question.
Yeah, we do.
How much do you think a Paizo 32-page module would cost for writing plus art plus editing plus blah? So here's a great developer question, right? A publisher can easily say, here's your budget. You got to spend this much money, no more than that. That's all we've got to make this project. So as a developer, you frequently have to have a good idea what it's going to cost to get things done. And those aren't universal answers. They vary by company. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why. Let's go with cover art. I'm not going to reveal the exact budget numbers from Paizo because that's proprietary information, but I can happily tell you that Paizo spends more for a Wayne Reynolds cover piece for one of their hardbacks than they do for back when the Player Companion, which I was developer for a number of years. The Player Companions had some beautiful art, but they were not as expensive and they did not take as long to get done. So let's just shoot some estimate numbers out there, something at about that range. You can easily expect to spend between $600 and $1,200 on the kind of cover that you would put on a 32-page module if you're doing it for a company like Paizo. Now, when I am looking for covers that are just as good, just as interesting, just as appropriate and bright for Rogue Genius, I have never spent $1,200 on a cover. Not once, not ever. I have some covers I've spent a few $100s on, which I do with, usually with people that I've got a long-standing relationship with, and I know what their price rates are. I might spend 150, 200, 300 on a cover, especially if you have a cover from someone like Jacob Blackman, who has a very much less painterly, hyper-realistic style than Wayne Reynolds, but it's a perfectly appropriate style for a lot of game products. But also for Rogue Genius, as an independent publisher and developer, I may well just look for stock art. You can get some tremendous masters of the crafts getting second use and stock art covers for $50 to $75, and a lot of that's available on drive-thru. You can get Dean Spencer, for example, Eric Lofgren. A lot of them have full cover art available. Now, there are pros and cons to doing that. One of the pros is that you can get this beautiful full cover art, and you can pick something that's going to be appropriate for your product. I sometimes pick the art first to make sure that I can do tie-ins in the outline and the writing to the art. The con is that if it's a beautiful, appropriate piece of art, a lot of other people may have used it. You're not getting exclusivity with stock art ever. So you got to think about those things. There are other sources for stock art. I don't want to go into a whole lot of deep dives. Brett Bowen, hopefully this live video will be available for you to watch later. It's a chat about publishing RPGs. Yes, I'm not sure why we lost Brett, but hopefully we'll have this up on YouTube. But let's say, just as an average, $1,000 for a cover for a 32-page Paizo-style product. Writing, you guesstimate that your writing will be 10 cents a word for a Paizo product. That brings you to the question, how many words is a 32-page product going to be? And my baseline that I go to, if I don't have better information, is 22,000 words per 32 pages. That will vary based on font size and layout density and how much art you have. And I have an article on paginations at my website, owenkcstevens.com. You should be able to type in paginations or word counts, and the article will come up. Because as the developer, I've got an art budget that will also worry about interior art. And I have to keep that in place. So I will be figuring out, I will have, let's say, in 32 pages, 2 half-page pieces of art and 8 quarter-page pieces of art. Some people will do more, some less, but let's go with that. That is, and Troy has already found the link to paginations and word counts. That is 3 pages worth of interior art. As a guesstimate, call it $300 per, or $500 actually per interior page. So that's another $1,500 of art. So we're at $2,500. Sorry, for $1,000 for the cover, $1,500 for interior. We've got 22,000 words at 10 cents a word. So that's another $2,200. So that brings us to $4,700. And then you have development and editing. Development and editing are done in-house at Paizo. In my experience, when those things are done freelance, developers are paid the same amount as writers, and editors are paid half as much as writers. It's not that clear cut, especially for a Paizo level publisher, because not only does Paizo have interior editors, they have like 3 rounds of editing. That's on top of the editing that the developer's supposed to do. That's on top of what final checks will look over. So even if they have a freelance editing pass, they will do another interior editing pass, even if everything's been done freelance. But if we're just going to guesstimate it, call it another $3,300 for development and editing. And that will bring us to, I'm not keeping track, but I think it's $8,800. That's about right. You have other potential things like layout. Again, Paizo does all its layout in-house. Layout, if you get it freelance, can vary anywhere from $1.50 a page to $10 a page. I know people that do everything in that range. And you want to have someone that will do some back and forth with you, so that if you say, hey, I want a 2-column layout, but it's really important that this piece of art be with this area. It's all stuff that you want to be able to discuss. But if we said 5 pages for, a 32-page product, $5 a page, that'd be what, $160. So around $9,000. That's a ballpark, but around $9,000 for the budget for a 32-page product for an RPG for Paizo. Uh, Different companies will spend different amounts of money, and the quality you get is not always directly connected to the amount of money you spend, but you frequently get what you pay for.
Mm.
When
Now,
I am
and you,
doing stuff for Rogue Genius, I certainly want to hit that same level of quality. One of the ways I do that is by working with stock art and trying to find good sources of cheap, obscure, appropriate stock art. But also, I will take a writing pass, then a development pass several weeks later, then an editing pass several weeks after that. And I have to wait several weeks because I'm developing and editing my own words. And I have to let my brain forget what I meant so that I can look
right.
at the page and see what it actually says. And so there I am sacrificing time. I'm spending a lot more time than I would on this if I was doing it for somebody else, because I have to do all these different tasks. And I have to put more effort in because I won't have more voices assisting with me. And some of it is as simple as when I was on staff at Paizo, if I am developing something and I'm like, you know what, I really want to do this product and I want it to have a title that has something to do with dragons, but I don't want to call it People of Dragons or Dragon Characters or Blood of Dragons. And I'm sitting next to Crystal Fraser, who at one point I was sitting next to when we both worked at Paizo, and she can just pipe up, what about Legacy of Dragons? Uh, Stan said, you know what you haven't figured out in that 9K? The salary of the developer as opposed to the cost of getting development. I think putting around 10K is where I'd put it. There's some salary of people involved regardless. And since they are always hybrid, you're guesstimating. But I know there are companies that do the same size product that to most people will feel like the same level of quality for $5,000. That may not be the same level of quality ultimately, and sometimes you're talking about a 5 or 10% difference. Paizo really seriously feels that that last 5% of quality is one of the reasons why they remain near the top of the RPG market. And you can look at game companies that came into existence about the same time Paizo did, and a lot of them aren't around anymore.
Right.
So they absolutely have a point. The flip side of that is that if I don't have the kind of budget and personnel they do, I can't put 10 grand into a 32 page product. And that's without printing, right? Printing is a whole nother kettle of fish.
That's right.
Which
Yeah.
which how much you spend printing is going to depend very much on how many you print. And the more you print, the less each one costs. However, that doesn't do you any good if you print more than you can sell, or if you print more than you can sell quickly enough for you not to have to start racking up warehousing fees. Paizo happens to own its own warehouse, but warehouses do not have infinite space. So Paizo does not want to print something and be told, okay, we will get through this print run in a decade, right? You really want to get through a print run in 1 to 2 years, if
And
at all possible.
you're also layering on an exponential, series of complications.
Absolutely.
Shipping and one little grain of sand, or maybe something as large as I don't know, a pandemic can throw your entire system out of whack.
And here's another place where developing is different for different levels of thing. When I am developing for Paizo or Green Ronin, that is not something anyone's putting on my plate, right? No one is asking me to worry about shipping or warehousing or printing. Those are all things that are being done by the publisher and by the operations team and by the editor in chiefs. Those are being handled by someone else. But if I am developing for myself, where I am also being the publisher, or sometimes when I am developing for a smaller company, they may come to me and say, hey, we just realized we haven't figured out how many of these we're going to print. What do you think? And if they just want my quick opinion, fine. You're paying me for my expertise, mostly in developing. But if they want me to sit down and figure out the cost benefit ratio and comps and look at what other print runs have run, that is outside the scope of my job as developing. So I have to say, hey, for that much time, we're talking about another job entirely. If you are, say, an executive director or something, or a producer, which can be another whole job, a producer sort of does the publishing end of a product, although these terms aren't written in stone. So one company's
Right.
producer may be another company's developer, maybe another company's publisher.
Yeah, a couple I just wanted to say hey to
Yeah.
Jahan and other folks who are joining us. Welcome to ThursdAGE. glad that you are here. And, Owen is giving us a crash course in publishing, but largely we're talking about the challenges of the indie developer. And as folks who are listening and watching, and I see you, indie developers, this is the precursor, like, without all of this overhead, it may seem like it's easier, but it doesn't get easier.
There's context to some of the rest of the commentary.
That's right.
So is that Sandra Tiny? My eyesight is not what it should be.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
Sandra Tiny had a very relevant point, and it's something that we have to touch on. The sad part of solo TTRPG development is that you have to learn to be an internet marketing wizard, and half your effort is on that instead of your product. I made a post a few weeks ago in social media, just it struck me, and I said, 1997, I don't want to be stuck doing a lot of paperwork and a lot of advertising work and a lot of copy ads and a lot of office work. I'm going to go to a career writing games. Then me, 2022. All right, so Schedule C of the company taxes requires me to look at our expenditures, and we really didn't spend enough on marketing last year. And I wonder if I should be on Instagram and trying to get more pictures that way. So Sandra's exactly right. There is a lot, especially if you're an independent, there's a lot that goes into having to know how to market your product.
Alex mentions that, yes, marketing a small business is pretty much a full-time job on top of the business itself. It really is. And every day when you are chasing the SEO dragon, you can find yourself, it changes so dramatically.
And Troy, what does SEO mean for those of us who are not familiar with it?
Search engine optimization.
Thank you, sir.
And there is, I was just going to get into that because you look at YouTube is not just a space where you upload a video. There's words that you don't see that we have to worry about. There's all of the counts, and you've got to see, like, okay, why is this video so high and the rest are so low, or why is all the videos are great except for that one, and that's just a tiny little fraction of the social media landscape, and it can be daunting.
And even just on YouTube, you have to ask yourself, do I want to monetize this video? Yeah. Is that a concern? Is there any chance I'll make enough money to make it worth it? If there is enough chance that I'll make enough money, and how much is it, right? If it's, I can make $10 on this video, well, we're going to put out a video every week. At the end of the year, I'd rather have another $500 than not. But then there are rules for what you can and can't do if you want your video monetized, or if you've clicked that I want it monetized and they detect some music in the background that they don't think that you should be using. Your video might be suspended. The audio might be suspended. The rules are deep and dense. I have more than once joked that I often feel like a dinosaur staring up at the comet in the sky, and the comet is called, for example, Reddit. I am not a master of Reddit. I've been on the front page of Reddit. I've been on the front page of Reddit for my story, The Rebel Lieutenant, which got on the front page of Reddit once, years after I'd released it. I have no idea what caused it to go viral at that moment, but it did. So most of my videos have between many hundreds and a few thousand hits. That one has like 260,000 views. It is a massive outlier because it got on the front page of Reddit. That's not a success I've been able to replicate. It's my very best story, so chances are I will never be able to do that exact alchemy again. But I sure have spent more attention to Reddit since then, and in my spare time, I will try to figure out what's going on with Reddit. Where are the places at Reddit that I should be discussing products? For Reddit in particular, I've discovered that no one on Reddit wants you to advertise to them, but they're okay if you're part of the community mentioning that you have a thing. That's a tricky
and that depends on the subreddit.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, and you get some people who are very, very militant and very clear about, and then just sort of the one thing that we haven't really touched on as far as this goes is general sentiment, because you can't just throw this stuff out into the world and go, phew, I'm done. Like Alex said, SEO and keywords are your best and worst friends. The worst in that you have to consistently look at what you're doing, what people who are in your space are doing, and try to find synergies that map but don't collide. And then having people who are weighing in on what you're producing and what you're sharing. People get really, really upset. I'm not exactly sure where my Echo has decided to chat with me, but
You're okay.
the challenge here is finding the balance between creating and marketing and connecting with people, and sometimes that stuff is live as well. I mean, it is just this is a big, and then add something like TikTok to the mix and you're like, wait, what? How do I why am I here? What is this?
I have a small pile of stuff literally sitting on my desk waiting for me to try and make my first TikTok video. I have not had time. I just haven't been able to do it.
As someone who's rolling out a TikTok plan for in partnership with some other folks and getting it ready for Gen Con, it's a lot. It's a whole lot. And like you said, you don't know what the thing that you did a long time ago without an intention of virality is the thing that goes viral. And you're like, wait a minute, all these other things that I've done, which I think are funnier or more punchy or whatever, don't get the same traction. It's wild. It's very, very.
And it changes. It changes so fast sometimes. Back in 2013, I was pretty sure I knew how to market on Facebook. By 2015, that wasn't true. And I have to vary what I'm doing every few years because the algorithms are pretty well constantly being tweaked to try and make sure that the things Facebook wants to go viral,
That's
not
right.
the things that I want to go viral. We've had another really important point, and it does touch on development to a certain extent, which is I'm starting to get the sense that Kickstarter is a requirement if you want to make any money. So that's not true. It's absolutely not true. But part of the question is, what do you mean by any money? I have, as a independent creator, put together, for example, I have a whole series of products called bullet points, which are literally one-page PDFs for first edition Pathfinder that I put up. Each of those is around 600 words. Generally speaking, they took me less than an hour to put together. I paid for another hour worth of work for them to get laid out. They exclusively use stock art. I would say that each and every one of those has made me around $50, me personally, for my 1 hour of profit. So that's a $50 an hour paycheck. That's not bad. I will take that every day and Sunday. It's never going to add up to $300,000. It's certainly not going to add up to $2 million. So the thing about about Kickstarter is that it is a great marketing opportunity where people are encouraged to market for you. When you put up something on Kickstarter and you tell them, hey, our base goal is $300, and if we hit $600, we'll add an extra 16 pages to the product, then the people that really want that 16 pages, especially if you can say, hey, there's a 32-page product called Guns Against Cthulhu, Pulp Adventures in the Lovecraftian Horrors of the Dark City. And if we have an extra 16 pages, we will add Fists Against Cthulhu, the super-powered Golden Age Hero supplement rules.
Right.
And people get super excited about that 16-page supplement. They will mention it on their social media, and they will talk to their friends, and they will point to it, and they will engage with you when you're doing updates, and all those things can drive engagement. It can also be a great way to figure out whether a product is a good idea or not. If I say, hey, I've got a product and I want 14 grand for it and it raises 2 grand and the Kickstarter fails, I can go, well,
that was
either this product's a bad idea or I have not figured out how to explain why it's a good idea to people. So those are super useful tools. But there are still every year successful, popular, profitable core rulebooks and supplements that companies are putting out with no Kickstarter whatsoever.
Now, Owen, you got a distinct advantage over sort of the entry-level, brand new kind of person, and that is you've been around in this space telling stories for some time. You're well known to say, the least. People are truly a fan of your work, and they're a fan of you as a person. They've gotten to know you. That's not the case for everyone.
No, and it can't be the case for everyone. And that can be an issue. So I made a choice in, I think it was 2009. I had an opportunity to be given part ownership of a company called Super Genius Games. But that opportunity came with the requirement that I start a Twitter and a Facebook account. I did not want a Twitter or a Facebook account. I had no interest in engaging with people that way. But
Right.
this was an opportunity to get a 1/3 stake in a tiny game company, but one I'd worked with and was continuing to work with. And, Stan was also part of that company, and I knew how much expertise he had. And I had seen the people that own that company do marketing and ad text and layout. And I'd had meetings with them about what kind of products worked well and publishing campaigns. So I wanted the opportunity to drink in their knowledge. So I agreed. And not long after that, I realized that if I remembered to post about a new PDF on Facebook, we sold more than if I didn't remember to post it. And I made a conscious decision to create a brand, Owen Casey Stevens, online because I was freelancing and writing for this company I own part of. And Stan says you're welcome. This is literally all Stan's fault. The fact that I am sitting here on a show right now is Stan's fault. I had no intention of being publicly accessible. I have anxiety. I have depression. I've got social awkwardness. In order to be able to talk in public, I forced myself to go to Toastmasters so that I could get over standing in front of a group of people and going,
Hey, a great resource. Really, really great resource.
Toastmasters is tremendous and free. And if you find it terrifying, I sympathize. The one upside is there's no actual pressure on it, right? No part of your success is tied to any speech you give there.
The other thing
Anyway,
as well, I mean, so I want to add to this when we're talking about
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
making public appearance, and in addition to, there are different kinds of public appearance, right? I mean, there are, and that is to say, different specialties, and a PR person is different than, say, a community comms person, than the talent.
Yep.
And those are also, and that isn't to sort of keep layering on complications, but those are and they are critical disciplines within the communications field. It's not all sort of the soft shoe and a smile. There's a ton that goes into it.
There absolutely is, although soft shoe and a smile is half of what I get away with. I also have to say that the risks of a public persona are different for other people. I am a bearded, white, cis, hetero, Anglo-Saxon Christian male. I am not the target group of most hate groups.
Right.
Even so, I've received a few death threats and a few campaigns of harassment over the course of my life, some of which impacted my mental health. But none of that was being driven by my identity. Also, while I was independent for a lot, I also had a lot of credits with big game companies, which came with a built-in respectability. If you are someone that there are hate groups dedicated to trying to drive them down, and you dare to create a public persona, it's not fair. It sucks, and I will do everything I can to try and change the environment. But you are a more likely target of harassment. And if you are someone that harassment can affect negatively, or if you think the harassment is going to a place where you might actually be unsafe, and that's your judgment to make, you have got to be safe. I just have to tell you, you've got to look at that and consider it. There are different venues for online personas. So like if you are on a show like this, if you have an opportunity to be one, or you're going to be interviewed by someone and it's their show, you can just not read the comments. And that's not sort of something you can do when it's your space, like your Facebook, your Twitter, your YouTube, etc.
Yes, thank you, USP. We are all excited to see Owen healthy and hail, for sure.
I am still recovering from pneumonia, but I am definitely on the upward trajectory at this point.
Yeah. We got a couple good questions. Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Just be aware if I suddenly fall asleep and pitch over sideways, that's why. Yeah, we do have some great questions, so let's get to them.
Okay, great. Dwayne says, what do you think is the future of publishing tabletop role-playing content to VTTs, and should large, small, and independent publishers learn how to do that? And are these specialized skills best left to resident experts? And I'll say this, it's easy to unpack and figure out that process. Owen, you look like you're ready to dive in with an answer.
I ran a Kickstarter recently for a Pathfinder first or second edition adventure written by Ron Lundeen, who worked at Paizo and has been hired away from them by Wizards of the Coast. So he is a high end person. He's a great writer, great guy. We had several people get on that Kickstarter and say, is there going to be VTT support? Because I will only back if there's VTT support. And we just did not have the time and energy to put in VTT support. So we're like, we may make it a stretch goal later, but right now, no. Now, I am the publisher for Rogue Genius Games. As a result, I get newsletters from DriveThruRPG. DriveThruRPG is going to be melding with one of the VTTs.
Roll20.
Roll20. Okay. And right now they are remaining separate storefronts, but they are certainly looking at making the PDFs that you put up on Drive-Thru potentially available. Stan also said Roll20, and making it easier for publishers to put VTT enhanced PDFs up. I have been told by a number of people at different levels of the industry that VTT sales are already in some cases outstripping other electronic sales, and in a few cases outstripping print sales. Some of that is going to be the pandemic, right? There are a lot of people who were not getting together in person as a result of the pandemic. But I think that means largely that the people that did that have overcome the learning curve of VTT and are beginning to appreciate how useful it is. Now, I play a few games on VTTs. I've never run a game on a VTT. I am still very much prefer myself personally the in-person experience when it can be arranged. But the games I'm playing with people on VTTs are with people who are on different time zones than I am.
Right.
There is no realistic way to do a weekly or monthly or even quarterly game with those people. And some of them are very dear friends and some of them are workers and colleagues. And I can certainly see that, you know, as people mature and get careers and move around and there's more and more ways to make friends online, that is going to be a advantage of VTTs that being in person can't overcome. Another advantage is that it looks to me like making a VTT game look awesome on everyone's computer screen is faster, easier, and cheaper than making the game look awesome on your kitchen table.
That's right. Yeah.
And takes a lot fewer boxes of storage.
That's right. Exactly. And it is where the consumers have been for some time now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that is when you think of and you look at the impact of Discord, another tool in the toolbox, online play, coordinated, collaborative online play has been around for some time. And the tabletop role-playing industry has been resistant, and with good it's understandable. Sitting around a table is what it's about. But yeah.
Well, and this is a thing that it makes the most sense for the bigger companies to do. That is why it has been very difficult for those companies to get into it. When you look at most bigger than Green Ronin, let's say companies, any game company, any RPG company that's bigger than Green Ronin, their budgets are set by the year. So if someone says, hey, here's another thing we want to do, then you got to figure out who's going to do it. Where's that money going to come from? We have already projected everything we're doing for this year. And then we have another set of budget talks. And then we're talking about a theoretical advantage of getting into a VTT. It does not shock me that it's taken a few years for any of them to start working into this. And some of them have worked into it through partnerships. Paizo has a partnership, for example, where they've said, hey, we're going to work with someone. We will give them our stuff and they will turn it into VTT content. And then they will give us a cut instead of us getting all of it if we've done the work ourselves. So I think to answer the original question, should independent publishers learn to get into VTTs, or are these specialized skills best left to the resident experts? If you've got the bandwidth, it is an incredibly valuable skill right now. And it may not only be valuable for your own products. If you can successfully put products up and sell them and get them noticed, you may become one of the VTT experts that other people who don't have the bandwidth to learn a new skill or a new system can then turn to and say, can I get you to convert my stuff and take a cut? And if the answer is, yeah, I'm happy to do that, I've got the time, this is a whole new way for you to make money.
there's a whole market as well of people who are developing just straight to VTT. That's
Yep.
art assets, all kinds of disciplines. It's pretty exciting. I want to roll back. Oh, so go ahead, Owen.
I've had VTTs and people who work with VTTs come to me through Rogue Genius and say, hey, can we get you to work with us on these things? And I have just never had the spare time. And I'm talking about for years now. And that is, it may or may not be a failure of vision on my part, but I do feel like it has been a failure to prioritize. This is a case where I want to encourage you. I think VTTs have proven that they are not a flash in the pan. This is not Pogs. And we're not talking about Beanie Babies here. I think as a market, it's going to be around. And while different VTTs have different proprietary systems they use, my understanding is that if you've figured out one, adding another one is easier than picking it up from scratch, even though not everything translates over directly.
Yeah, absolutely. The other question here, and this could be a whole nother hour, a week long discussion. The best bang for your buck when it comes to spending money on marketing, is it Twitter? Is it, and I think from let's make sure we're thinking about it from the perspective of that indie developer. It's a one person show.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the best bang for your buck is the thing that works. Like, it is so, I hate to say that, but you know, it is, you'll have the crowd on Facebook and the crowd on Twitter and the crowd on Reddit are very different. Focusing on a Reddit campaign is the first thing I think of as like a really smart idea. Tabletop and Reddit hand in hand, and you can really get granular about who you're targeting, and it is cost effective. I mean, you know, you can really see in real time what your ad is doing and then adjust everything from language to all kinds of stuff. But it is a whole art form unto itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the reasons that I have myself pretty good results with my own products on Twitter and Facebook is I've been on Twitter and Facebook for 13 years building a following. And I build a lot of that following by making sure that more of my posts are interesting, entertaining, funny, or informative than are asking, right? I try to make sure that the majority of my posts are therefore, if you are a fan of the stuff I'm a fan of, you will enjoy this post. And then only a very small minority are, hey, here's a thing of mine you can spend money on. And by doing that, I am trying to create the idea that it is worth following Owen. I'm not asking you to spend money you don't want to spend, but if I publish it and you like the other stuff I like, chances are you'll like this too.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to your how you come online, how much time do you spend thinking how a certain take or a certain engagement, and I'm not speaking about sort of, you know, people out there who are going to have, you know, ideological differences or harass or sort of be trolls, but how much of your brand, your Owen brand, are you careful about and curating?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. But that's not as bad as it sounds. I have some rules and guidelines that I've established for myself that I use with all things I do that anyone else could possibly read, be that email or Facebook, or Twitter, or being on this show, right? I assume even if it's an email or direct message, or even a secure messaging app, which I have occasionally used, I assume that once I have put it into an electronic form and it's not just sitting on my secured hard drive, if it's anywhere else, that someone will read it. So someone I don't want to read it. That is always my baseline assumption. It has only happened rarely, but that is always my rule. I have some other rules, like if my wife asks me why I'm typing angrily, whatever I'm typing will not get sent for 15 to 20 minutes. I will stop, I will do something else, and I will come back. I once was typing so hard on a response to an email that I broke the E key on my keyboard. And I was alone in the office when it happened. And I very much thought to myself, if I'm so mad I'm breaking my keyboard, then I am not carefully, rationally considering the consequence of the language I'm using. I'm going to put this email away. I will come back to it later. When I am not so angry, I'm beating things up. So, always make sure that you're not saying something you don't want someone to know you said. Always make sure you are not posting when you are angry. I try not to post when I'm depressed unless I am posting about being depressed. I have one of the things I've said about online communications and with my depression, I've got clinical depression. I'm medicated for it today, especially, thank goodness. Is that when you're dealing with text, a smiley face at the end of anything you write makes people think you're in a good mood. And I have posted jokes while crying because I wanted my brand to be engaging in a positive way, even though I was entirely not in a good place at the time.
Right.
But everyone has to figure out how to do that for themselves.
And it's doubly important when you're communicating in the online space. And I do a lot of work with people who are in that space trying to figure out how to maintain sort of their, and the reality is authenticity is your ticket. Authenticity, you being really who you are, so long as you're not an odious person with villainous views, but being yourself, being forthright, being authentic really is an investment in the future time when you accidentally do something or say something that doesn't pan out. We will ship this by this date. That is the classic. But good natured connection and authenticity saves you a little trouble and trauma in the future.
Yeah, I'm 2 years late on. I will successfully ship 208 PDFs over 52 weeks for this subscription service.
Right.
People have gotten a lot of it, about half. So it's not that I've done nothing, but that was launched, at the beginning of 2020, and it turns out pandemic, pneumonia, moved 3 times during the pandemic. It's insane.
It is, and so we're talking about, as an indie developer, you've got to do all the things that we were talking about up front, for which there are well-paid, trained disciplines. I mean, people who are expertise, they have an expertise. Then you have all of the promotional stuff, and you as a vessel of promotion, unless you're deciding that you're going to be speaking as your company, the same rules apply, even if you're not going to be out there as an individual.
Well, and speaking of speaking as a company, one of my other rules is if I am talking in a company's who pays me space or about their products or with their name associated with mine, I need to keep in mind that I'm being a representative of that company.
That's right. And I have actually some very strict rules as it relates to that. I mean, it's always, authenticity is important, but it is always we. It's not a venue or an avenue for me to personally sort of say I, unless it's something, there's an occasion to say the person who's coordinating this communication totally did that wrong thing. You know what I mean? Just to sort of, it is whether that one wrong thing is sort of misspelling something, and people will come at you for all kinds of stuff. And not the least of which the intended tone of what you're saying, which can be a real struggle.
Well, and tone can be hard to express in text.
Absolutely. One of the things I really enjoy about the work in the TTRPG space is that we get people who are engaging with us on topics like this, who are experts in their own right, in areas and arenas. And it is an unusual space to be in, where the hobby and the creation of the materials for that hobby have a lot of intersection, and a lot of people with, whether it's a good storyteller, artist, whatever it is, you will see a blending of, if there's a fan, and if they're really into it, you can almost guarantee that they have their fingers in some other sort of development projects. But let's see, real quick. Yeah, everyone kind of talking about how Reddit is just difficult and a full-time job unto itself. People will definitely agree with you there.
That brings me to a point. I think, especially if you're an independent developer, publisher, creator, it is very useful from my point of view to find online communities you are comfortable in.
Yeah.
For a few reasons. First, an online community that you're comfortable in, that is relevant to what you're doing, is a great place to read what other people are saying and suggesting and doing and works for them. If you are a part of that community and they acknowledge you as part of the community, you can start to occasionally ask questions. And if that community embraces you and thinks of you as one of theirs, then they will want to help you. So if you have, if you're putting together a post that says, hey, I just wanted to say this is what I'm working on this week. Or if someone puts up a post, which happens on Twitter all the time, hey, what are y'all working on? That is an opportunity to leap in there and say, oh, this is what I'm working on since you asked. And I think that having the community to learn from and to be able to ask questions of, and then be able to depend on them to assist you to a certain degree with things like when you put out products, liking it, boosting it, etc. Those are really useful tools, but it has to be a community you're comfortable with.
D&D Combat says, pro tip for Reddit, find a post that did really well in the past. That's a pro tip really that can be applied to a lot of things. Like if you're seeing a company and you like their marketing and you like what they're doing, or you like their tone or their voice or the things that they're sharing, take a minute to pull that apart and find out why they're super, why they're appealing to you and where their success is coming from. I think that that's a real healthy space to explore.
And a great way to become part of a community is to positively comment on, boost, and share things that other people in the community are doing.
That's right. Yeah. Let's see. So D&D Combat says, when I listened to
the Fear of the Black Dragon podcast, they always examine the art. That seems to be important, but if you're not an artist, very hard to do. Do you need an art director? So what you need is for your art to be appropriate for your product. Now, you don't have to be an artist necessarily to know what art goes well with your product. I am absolutely not an artist. I have, over the 26 years I've been in the industry, gotten some very strong opinions about what kind of art is appropriate with various kinds of products. Not everyone in the industry agrees with my ideas, and that's fine, and I listen to theirs too. An art director is great if you get a great art director. It is also an additional expense. I personally would not get an art director for my first products. Now, I happen to have, as my wife, a person with a bachelor's of fine arts who has done art in the industry, who's done art direction in the industry, who does layout in the industry, who teaches art here in Oklahoma. So I have, in that regard, an unfair advantage, because if I say, this doesn't look right to me, LJ, does this look right to you? She can say, no, their feet are way too small. And I'm like, oh, that is what it is. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. And then I can go to the artist and say, so can we make the feet a little bigger? They seem out of proportion. And by the way, several artists have told me that they love working with me because I can give them specific comments on what I want to have changed. And that is frequently due to my ability to run it by my wife. But I also work with Stan, for example. But this is another place where community can be useful, right? You can look and see what kind of art does the community that likes the things you want to do like. If you are in a space where a whole bunch of people are using black and white, old style ink art, then maybe that's appropriate for your game product. The flip side of that is you can take something that people say won't work and turn it into part of your brand. Raging Swan Press, all of their covers are black with the title and the Raging Swan Press logo, and that's it. They have no cover art whatsoever. And that means that when people go to drive-through and they see a little tiny thumbnail, it's just this black rectangle with a couple little words, they immediately know that that is a Raging Swan Press new product. And if they are fans, they click on it. So they have turned a truism in the industry that your cover art's important. They have flipped that on its head and gone a different direction entirely and embraced it and made it work for them.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It is worth listening to what people say about your art. We did an experimental product a while back that had two columns, and by we, I mean Rogue Genius, that had two columns offset from each other, floating in a sea of full color background art. And we got some complaints, and people said, I want to print this, and that's going to be a stupid amount of ink. So for that product, we did a no art version, and then we just stopped doing that. I don't think an art director is necessary. I do think some understanding of what art works in your genre, your area, what the costs are, what the benefits are something you're going to have to muddle your way through as an independent creator if you don't have some way of getting outside feedback.
And also the tabletop roleplay space is just renowned, as you mentioned, some of that classic art for having, maybe not the best art. That isn't to say don't try hard, but there's a nostalgia, kind of piece to that,
Yeah,
and you do it
yeah, there is.
purposely. And yeah,
I mean, the first edition player's handbook for AD&D had a lot of black and white art and a few cartoons in it. And mostly you don't see that anymore. But if what you're looking for is to give people the feel that this will give you the rush of nostalgia that looking at your old books does, maybe it is a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will see in the independent development space, especially for artists, that there's a wide variety of art styles and quality depending on the eye of the beholder. But listen, this eye is beholding the fact that we started 2 minutes early, and it is 3 minutes after. This has been an hour plus just chock full of stuff, and I feel like there's more to unpack around the subject. Is it something that we want to Stan Stan being a very talented artist, and one of my favorite folks on the planet, do we want to sort of continue this dialogue in the future and sort of have maybe our next ThursdAGE be a little more about sort of the indie stuff?
Yeah, actually, I think that's a great idea.
Right on. All right. Well, let's do that then. In the interim, if you've got questions or there's something that came up, or you've even got some advice or some thoughts for things that have worked for you, would you do me a favor and send a note to let's play at greenrunner.com with your comments, your questions, and we will incorporate that, your thoughts into the next show as well. And I'm particularly interested in hearing from our resident experts. If you've got sort of your area and your space, and you feel, you've got something to share that will lighten the load for today's indie developer, or tomorrow's indie developer, bring it. Let's talk about it.
And for those of you who are specifically saying that this was helpful, thank you. And if you want more help, here's some homework. Think of a question we didn't cover that you would like us to address and send it to let's play at greenrunning.com, because it never would have occurred to me to talk about art directors. Wouldn't have come up. It's a great question. I'm glad we addressed it. Think of anything that you would like to know as an independent developer, creator, writer, that we didn't give you enough information, or we didn't touch on, or the advice we gave doesn't seem to apply to you, and here's why, and send that to us, because I will do as many shows on these topics as y'all send me questions for.
So it also secretly sort of scratches my itch, which is one of the things I've always wanted to do, is a feature wherein it's sort of best advice from Owen. We give some of the best advice, and this is a lot of fun. I want to thank everybody who's been engaging with us. Really value it. Make sure that you are liking, subscribing, and tickle the bell and all that jazz, because that's part of what we need to ask so that we can continue to kind of do our thing here. And again, don't forget to send a note to let's play at greenrunner.com with your thoughts, commentary, and even if you disagree, that's okay. We like people who disagree. Just don't be a jerk. Leave my mom out of it. Owen, so good to see you. So glad that we had this conversation today. Thank you very much for your time. And
Thanks,
everybody else, we will see you all next ThursdAGE for more of this.
Bye,
Take
folks.
care, everyone.